So Guayaba Press started in, I'm going to say 2013. It started in a residency in Canada, in Banff. I was invited to the residency by a designer called Will Holder. He's a designer and typographer and writer and editor, and he used to be the editor of this amazing magazine called F.R. David from the Apple in Amsterdam. And he's pretty much a weirdo, like long beard. And so he invited a couple of people from different disciplines, mostly designers, critical designers, that's how they call them today, to go to Banff and kind of develop a project, no? Develop a project which, in a way, was connected to music and musical scores and how musical scores are translated into a publication. And so I was really interested, and I've been doing, at that moment I had just finished grad school, and I was really interested in this experimental composer called Colin Nancarrow. He was American, born in Arkansas, and married, then went to New York, and in the 1950s, he went to Spain to fight in the Civil War, and when he returned to the States, he was kind of expelled, no? He was a political exile. So most of American leftists, had two choices, either go to Canada or Mexico, no? Canada, you don't need a passport, either Mexico. And so he arrived in Mexico in 1953. I was just fascinated by this figure, no? This experimental composer living in Las Águilas, in the middle of the city, such a chaotic place. And the fact is, well, he marries Annette Nancarrow, and they divorce 2 years after. And Annette decides to sell the house next to hers for a very, very cheap price to Colin Nancarrow, his former husband. And so Colin Nancarrow, he was a total hermit in a way. He wasn't part of any musical scene in Mexico. And so he decided, he was kind of a socially awkward in a way. Supposedly he couldn't be around more than 8 people at a time. Like he would just get kind of certain paranoia and would have to leave. And so this is Colin Nancarrow, and Colin Nancarrow started working on a series of musical scores called Studies for Player Piano. It would take him around 1 year just to compose one study. He did, I think, 49 studies in the span of his lifetime. And so he moved to sorry, I'm kind of jumping around. My English is rusty, sorry. And so while he was living next to Annette Nancarrow, he decided to build a studio. That's the only thing he decided to build. And the only friend he had was a Mexican architect that was who was also involved with the modern movement, called Juan O'Gorman. Has anyone heard of Juan O'Gorman? Of course you have, no? The Mexican muralist, architect, painter, so on. And both of them created an amazing friendship. I don't know if amazing is a word, but they became really good friends. So Juan O'Gorman designed his studio, which is all volcanic stone, which is pretty amazing. I wish I had more photos. It was a studio designed soundproof with volcanic stone. So it looks kind of like you have to like move like 7 doors, kind of like a bank, how do you call a bank? Una bóveda, ya saben, que tienen que darle vueltas, a bank vault, just to get inside the studio. And Colin Ankara would spend days and weeks there just composing, which was like this really systematical and really mathematical way of composing, which is all based in punching scores. Juan O'Gorman was totally insane. He decided to build a house inside a cave. Has anyone heard of the cave house of Juan O'Gorman in El Pedregal? So he decided to build his own house inside a cave, a natural cave in El Pedregal. And he had this idea, which is really modern, that the house was a living laboratory, no? So he moved his whole family to the cave, which I could show better pictures. So this is Juan O'Gorman playing chess with Max Cheto, another architect. Juan O'Gorman, they had to move back, because, 7 years, I think Juan O'Gorman must have been 70, whatever, and they had to move back to their functionalist house, which Juan O'Gorman hated, which is this one, and to save his marriage in a way, no? And so he moved back, which is the house next to Frida's and Diego's. It's Juan O'Gorman's studio, then it's this other house next to it, and as you can see, it's super functionalist and whatever. And so he hated this house, and it's a moment in his life when he kills himself. And supposedly it's that I found Luis, Nancaro's stepson, bought the house after Juan O'Gorman killed himself. And so in a way, they all were connected, no? And how this house kind of destroyed themselves. But the rumor is that Colin Nancaro, they would have lunch every Sunday in Juan O'Gorman's house. And that one day, Colin Nancaro went to have lunch, and that he would open the house and he would see Juan O'Gorman hanging from one of the trees, no? He killed himself. And more than his music, I was intrigued by the relationship between Colin Ankaro and Juan O'Gorman, no? And this relationship that they kind of developed. So I decided to invite different artists and to kind of like dwell on the idea of the garden, of the studio, this romantic notion of the studio, no? And